evening. It's 6 p.m. So the November Board of Directors meeting is called to order. Let me read our ethics statements for the board. Conflict of interest reminder. Board members are reminded it's our duty to avoid conflicts of interest and the appearance of conflicts of interest as we handle the work of this board. Does any member of the board know of any conflict of interest or any appearance of conflict with respect to any matters coming before us at this meeting? Hopefully you reviewed the agenda. If so, please state them now for the board. Yes or no? Okay. Thank you. If during the course of this meeting you become aware of an actual or apparent conflict of interest, please bring the matter to the attention of the chair, and it will then be your duty to abstain from participating in discussion on the matter and from voting on the matter. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started. Can you please review the agenda? And I'll entertain a motion for approval of the agenda.
Make a motion to approve.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion approved. Okay, we'll move right into our celebrations and recognitions with Ms. Pulliam.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to brag on some of our students this month. We're actually going to have two groups of students that we're going to recognize this month to get caught up. August sort of snuck past us and we weren't able to get all of our core values in. So we're going to start by recognizing those students who've shown a champion effort in demonstrating respect. If you'll come forward as I call your name. Matthias Soika. Matthias is representing kindergarten through second grade. Mary Wiggs, I think he needs a buddy. Mary is representing third through fifth grade. Jace Denton. Jace is representing sixth through eighth grade. And Bonnie Prince. I believe she's at an athletic event. Matthias was chosen. If they can all stay at the front, please. Mary. Ms. McGinnis is going to get some pictures while I brag on you a little bit. Matthias was chosen because he's a very well-mannered young man. He works well with other students in class and tries to keep any students when needed, tries to help any students when needed. Loves help out with different activities in class. He's also very polite and kind. Mary was selected because she respects not only the people, but she also respects the learning environment as well as herself. She's the first one to offer help, and she's always one to help pick up others' things without complaining or being asked. And Jace was selected because he's very considerate and shows regard to everyone. He respects himself, which makes him a great role model for his peers. Matthias was selected and recommended by Ms. Hodges. Mary was represented by the entire fourth grade team, Ms. Pike, Ms. Turnbrough, Ms. Wellbrook, and Ms. Jones, and Jace was recommended by Ms. Gurley. Please join me in congratulating these three students in earning the core values of respect. While Bonnie is not here, thank you so much. She was selected by Ms. Miller, or recommended by Ms. Miller. As a senior, she not only cheers on the varsity girls basketball varsity team, she's in the process of applying to college, hopes to major in the criminal justice field, is an extremely respectful student at News Charter, and works hard in her classes. The next core value that we would like to recognize is the value of positive climate. So again, students, as I call your name, if you'll come forward and hang out with Dr. Silver. Lucas Demoff, representing kindergarten through second grade and recommended by Ms. Baker. Love the hat. Jordan Sullivan, representing grades 3 through 5 and recommended by Ms. Hines. Sabrina Brownlee, representing grades 6 through 8 and recommended by Ms. Harris. And Abby Lampy, who I also believe is on a court somewhere, representing grades 9 through 12 and recommended by Ms. Bruner. Lucas was recognized for always having a positive attitude in every situation. Jordan was selected because she always has a smile on her face and is a ray of sunshine to others. She's a bright spot in the room and always helps teachers and other students have a positive day. Sabrina was recommended because she is a joy to be around. She exemplifies so many of our News Charter School core values. Her kindness, willingness to help others, and permanent smile provide a positive climate for all those she comes in contact with. Sabrina is the first to volunteer for a job and always works hard on any task she takes on. Please join me in congratulating Lucas, Jordan, and Sabrina. And while Abby couldn't join us, I'd be remiss if I didn't read her comments because they're gushing. Ms. Bruner recommended her, saying that Abby really wanted to win the Positive Climate Award last year. She worked hard to fake it till you make it. Her positivity was forced at all times, but even after she didn't win, she continued working on being positive, even in challenging situations. This year, she truly has embraced being positive. She encourages others, gives positive encouragement to others when appropriate, tries to keep a positive outlook even when facing negative situations. Other students have even noticed how the positive attitude stuck and became a part of who she is. The change she's witnessed over the last 3 years is remarkable, and has to say that Abby is a great positive role model for others, and her attitude definitely encourages a positive climate at News Charter. So that is our celebrations for this month. We're going to save some of our staff recognitions for later in our report when we talk about our academic redesign initiative. So thank you.
Great. We don't have any public comments, so why don't we all make a public comment by saying, "Good job, Cougars," to our students. 1, 2, 3. Good job, Cougars. All right, so we will have our approval of minutes. Hopefully you have had a chance to review the minutes, and I'll entertain a motion. All in favor? All opposed? Motion's passed. Okay. We'll have a booster club report or a report from student government.
So our Student Government Association is beginning the organization of our more extended projects, such as homecoming prom and ongoing volunteer work. Since our last meeting, we have had Red Ribbon Week, which had the purpose of bringing attention to the cause of drug prevention. And I'm very happy to say that there was some very good participation among our student body and even some of our teachers. So that was very fun. The Thanksgiving National Honors and Junior Honor Society food drive was a success, and with its student-run effort, they were able to collect over 100 items ranging from canned and boxed goods to toiletries in order to provide those for our NCS Angel Tree this holiday season so far. As it continues, we hope to be able to start another food drive or bake sale in order to raise funds and contribute more during this winter time with the goal of giving back to the community and supporting our school's own projects. With the success of our Pep Club Powder Puff Tournament, if you're able to come see it, that was very exciting. The SGA has been looking into hosting another such event run by students for basketball season, and another effort to encourage school spirit and collect donations as well. We're trying to mix it up with our fundraising efforts and food drive collection, so that we thought that'd be a fun, creative idea. Details are yet to be cleared up, but the interest is there and being worked on. Additionally, there is a student-run leadership retreat beginning to be organized by SGA members and affiliated students, where up to 40 students will participate in a weekend-long retreat in order to foster positive leadership qualities in a unique environment. Details on this event are still yet to be finalized, but it's something that our leaders are very excited about and greatly looking forward to.
Like going?
It's in the woods. Perhaps, yeah. It's when some camp. It's usually running out, but there's going to be like some activities that the student leaders are going to decide on that. So we'll make use of that unique setting.
Howard Woods at JCC is really fun. You can stay in a cabin. Oh, okay. There's lots to do.
You get off the tent?
Huh? The tent. Well, you can stay in a tent, but they have very nice cabins out there. director's report. Oh, I'm sorry, were you done? Thank you very much, I appreciate that.
Thank you. As a staff update, we currently have one remaining vacancy for 8th grade math, but we hope to have some information for you in closed session tonight to address that issue. And then I really wanted to spend the bulk of my report today talking to you a little bit more about our academic redesign initiative. As you know, we've been talking about it for a while, but still getting that common language out there and getting everybody to understand what all it entails has been a bit of a struggle. And so one thing that we thought about was, with some guidance from the Academic Affairs Committee and oversight, was that we probably need to think about a proper brand for it. And as we continue talking about academic redesign, we know that has a sort of temporary name to it. It means that it's going to only be in effect for a short period of time. It also maybe makes it sound as if what we're starting with isn't good enough. On occasion that can be misconstrued and makes it sound like maybe we're starting over, which is not exactly the case. What we're doing is building on a really strong foundation. So we kind of knocked our heads together and thought it through, and we've come up with sort of a new logo type brand for this initiative that's actually a little bit more long-lasting than just the implementation phase. It would really truly describe our academic programs, and so we're proposing that we call this PLUS. PLUS stands for Performance, Learning, Underscoring Success, and it describes our overall framework for academic programming at News Charter. Like we said, during the initial phases of implementation, our staff has been really hard at work identifying core learning competencies that we will ultimately use to guide the enrichment of our curriculum, PLUS. In addition, everything that we do, we want to enhance the learning environment for our students, to really make it a positive environment and to really enhance and increase those educational opportunities. So the way we look at it, it's students plus teachers plus families plus the community all working together for us to achieve success. Specifically, we want to work together to ensure that our students succeed in graduating with proficiency in all of our identified competencies, which I know we'll take up later in the agenda. In addition, we want to use that competency-based approach to design our curriculum and inform our instructional strategies so that we maximize our student learning and thus student performance. So with that, I'll take any questions about the general logo. This is my first, I got it today. So this is its first reveal of a draft to look at, but it gives us lots of opportunities to be able to say NCS Plus, to really show where everything that we're doing in our academic programming is aligned to creating an enriched student learning opportunity, maximizing student learning for our students. And so if what we're doing doesn't align with that mission, then it's out of step of where we're headed.
I think it's the right acronym.
We fell in love with that one. I mean, it was a bit of a loopy session. Some silliness was had, but when we heard plus, it just stuck. Oh my gosh, that's exactly it. And then we handed it over to one of our staff members who happens to be a graphic designer. And he had the idea of embedding it in a light bulb to really get that brightness added to the concept of it. And we wanted to complement our color scheme, so it'll be able, we've already got some templates of how it might look on logos or a letterhead, or how it might complement the News Charter existing logo and be a News Charter Plus. So we're really thinking about how this outlives just an implementation phase and really becomes how we describe our academic program.
The plus makes it sound like that you're building on a base versus
Exactly.
switching gears. which,
Exactly.
makes people.
Right. And even within our own staff, you know, when we talked about it and you hear the word redesign, it sounds like, well, wait, is what I did not good? It's like, no, it's a strong foundation. We just want to keep always looking for that continuous improvement. So I agree. I like the symbol that the plus gives us.
Continue working on logo kind of thing.
Well, it's just it's out there for comment and feedback at this point. Like I said, it's its first unveiling. So if you have any comments or feedback, please feel free to share. It's a way better improvement from my weird highlight design that I shared.
How many competencies did we end up having?
Four.
Because even the parts of the, like you could click on it and that could go to each one of the competencies.
Any other comments? So then at this point, I'd actually like to hand over the mic to Dr. Silver to give us a little bit more of a mechanical update. You've got a PowerPoint in your packet to share with you, to kind of give you the overview of what she's going to share, but I really asked her to start talking about what have we already started doing that aligns with PLUS, and show you some of the benchmark data that we've received. So I believe in your materials, you will see a packet that looks like this. You're going to see from here.
Good evening, everybody. One of the things about PLUS is that it begins with the students. So I'm going to start by celebrating our students and give you a brief update on our academic teams. For starters, I want to start with LEGO League. Our first LEGO League, our teams placed first and second place at the game table in Johnston County's first LEGO League scrimmage. Courageous Shadow Cougars, which is one of our teams, they actually won first place overall in the first LEGO League scrimmage. And we want to shout out Mr. Katie for constructing the cabinet that you see up here. And that was one of our staff members' spouses that constructed that for our team so that they could have some place that was big enough but safe so that it had 2 locks to store their creations while they wait to code. First Tech Challenge team, which is our higher level students, they have Team Noosa, and their robot that they built this year is Armstrong the robot. And Armstrong ran 6 rounds in the robot challenge during the November scrimmage at the Forge Initiative. And all of our LEGO leagues, they will start their second round of competitions in January. So please be on the lookout for that. Next, I want to move to our American Mathematics competition, or our AMC group. We had 20 students in grades 6 through 12 that took the AMC 8 in November, and we're awaiting the scores. We should have the scores by the end of December that we can share out. 7 students so far have committed to take the AMC 10 and AMC 12. Our National Honor Society for our high school group, they co-sponsored a food and toiletries drive to benefit the News Charter School Angel Tree with the middle school group, or the Junior Honor Society as well. They are currently organizing a blood drive later on in the year. Our National Honor Society at the middle school, we're currently up to 40 students in participation. We have a paper drive scheduled, and we will be hosting a holiday hangout to fund a tour of several colleges and universities. We want to start them with exposure as soon as possible. Our elementary National Honor Society is currently engaging in a plastic bottle recycling program, and they are hosting events to fundraise the support of a Florida pet shelter that was damaged by the hurricane. Our science fair was a huge success. We currently had 47 participants this year, which was a huge increase in what we've had last year. We tripled our participation from last year. We had 11 judges that represented various organizations from across our area and our community. And they were of a high caliber, and the students were just so excited about them. And they just took to our students, and they actually want to follow our students to the regional competition and cheer them on. So they're definitely wanting us to keep them in the loop, and they've already committed to next year as well. Another thing that we did differently this year, to get our students excited about viewing the science fair projects and participating, we partnered with UNC Destiny Bus from the Moorhead Planetarium, and they visited our school and conducted lab experiments with our middle school and high school students. They performed ELISA testing to identify flu and rabies viruses, which they will be able to add to their resumes and their college applications as a new skill set. And here's a graph showing where we were able to triple. So we realized that we had a dip in participation last year, but we were able to recoup that this year and triple our participation. And we're going to have 8 entries in a regional fair for our elementary academy, and we'll be having a total of 5 entries for our middle school academy. And we realized that this year we don't have any entries for the senior academy and the regional entries, but we've already begun to strategize and come up with ideas of ways to implement possibly an elective course that will create an avenue for those students to be able to work on science fair protocols and project construction, and learning how to conduct experiments and actually work as a science methods class to prepare them for not just the science fair, but for upcoming upper level science courses as well. Okay, so we bragged about our students, but I wonder where they get it from. They get it from our staff, because they're awesome as well. So let's talk about our staff for a little bit. We've had several celebrations. I'm just going to hit a few of them. For starters, let's talk about Ms. Joyner, our Spanish teacher. She was honored at the Flank Conference for being a Flank Incredible World Language Teacher. And as a result, our Spanish team, they were invited to present their data walls, which was a concept from our academic redesign efforts. They were invited to present at Pitt County's Foreign Language Showcase. As a result of attending the conference, they both have written for Flank grants, so fingers crossed that we receive something soon that they've been awarded. All of our beginning teacher mentors are now North Carolina certified, and they're also certified to train new beginning teacher mentors in case we have other mentors that want to volunteer. All of our teachers and admins have now been trained on EBOS, which is a tool created by SAS for data analysis. And that too was another key component of our academic redesign efforts and a huge reason why we've been successful with implementing our benchmark process and why we're starting to experience growth in both our teachers and our students. Mr. Kaiser and Ms. Hines, they were accepted into the first NCAT charter school cohort where they learned how to implement digital teaching and learning. Ms. Jenkins and Ms. Wilson, they continue to present professional development sessions for the North Carolina Museum of Art Fellowship for Collaborative Teaching, and they applied for that and they had to be accepted into that as well. So they're generating lots of publicity from the museum. Ms. Bruner and Mr. Kaiser, they both renewed their national board certifications, which is a huge undertaking. Ms. Bruner was also recognized as FSI's Teacher of the Week. Ms. Wellbrook was named a semester superstar by the Smithfield-Selma Chamber. So our teachers are really doing an awesome job and really getting our school on the map. Okay, let's talk about what makes this possible. So what I did was I created a pie chart to show you how we've been utilizing this professional development fund. As a result, we've really been seizing the opportunity to grow and develop and paying it forward. So far, we've had 33 staff members as of now that have participated in PD opportunities that weren't sponsored by NCS. So we're branching out. Teachers are sharing their knowledge gained through their PLCs. They're bringing back free resources for others to share. And they're offering to present mini workshops, so we don't even have to ask them. They're volunteering to do workshops for their peers that could not go to the conference. As of now, we've spent slightly under $7,000 for our fall PD opportunities, so we're making the most of our funds. You'll notice that you'll see a big chunk of that going to guidance. The reason being is that we found out that colleges are changing how they do their application process. So we really got strategic after we viewed our data, and we're sending our counselors to the colleges where most of our students are applying to so that we can tweak our processes and coach our students so that they know strictly what that university is looking for. Also, you'll notice a big chunk going to health and safety, and that's because we found out from our teacher working conditions survey that we really need to focus on boosting that health and that safety around our school. So getting people trained on how to deal with various situations, how to respond to small health incidences or issues that may arise. You'll see a large chunk going to EC, because not necessarily want to focus on our EC population, but some of those strategies cross over to our general ed as well. So we've gotten really strategic about that. Okay, so now we're getting down to benchmarks. This is a new process. I'm not going to show you everyone, but you have everyone in your packet, but I'm going to highlight a few grade levels that'll give you an idea of how this process has worked. And basically this process is a huge chunk of plus, which is what we talked about earlier. And it's an indicator of the performance learning that is implemented from the benchmarks this year for our math courses and our EOC courses as well. So that's why you only see those courses in your packet.
What's the benchmark 1 and benchmark 2? I want to make sure I'm sure that it's
Good question. So benchmark number 1 was given the week before the first progress reports. Benchmark number 2 was given the week before the second progress reports. We always benchmark the week before progress reports go out. Okay? All right, so what is a benchmark? I just want to make sure we're all clear on the vocabulary. So a benchmark assessment is a short test that teachers give throughout the school year that provides teachers with immediate feedback on how students are meeting the academic standards set by our state. These benchmark assessments allow us to measure student growth and then go back and tweak our curriculum to meet our students' learning needs. The benchmarks cover content from all academic standards that the students have learned since the start of the school year. So each benchmark, we add on more standards. The benchmark assessment is designed to mimic the EOC and the EOG test that they'll take at the end of their course, wherein students would receive a proficiency score of 1 to 5. So now, how are we doing? So I want to use third grade as an example for you all. One of the things we noticed about third grade had an extreme amount of growth. What do we attribute that to? They performed research-based interventions that were identified from the book study, Teach Like a Champion, that they were utilizing in their PLCs. They said, ooh, this might work for my students. So what they did was they said, we're not going to focus on everyone for the first benchmark. We're going to be strategic and target different groups for each benchmark. So after the first benchmark, they said, we're going to target our level 1s and our level 2s. We're going to try to move them. We're still going to enrich our four level 4s and level 5s, but we're really going to target them and try to move them. And as a result, that's why you see the surge in the amount of level 4s and the amount of level 5s for the second benchmark, the red column. That's why you see that huge boost, because what they did was they moved everyone up a level. Another interesting thing that I want to show you is fifth grade. Fifth grade was a little bit different. With fifth grade, we noticed right away that they needed an increase in rigor, because the first benchmark, they had an insane amount of level 4s and level 5s, but the 1s, 2s, and 3s were kind of low. And we were like, okay, something's not quite adding up here. So we said, maybe we didn't make the test as rigorous as it should have been. Maybe they're not reaching their capacity. So what we did with benchmark number 2, we wrote the questions so that they reached a higher level of Bloom's taxonomy or higher ordered thinking skills. We increased that. So we put them at the top of that level. And that's why you notice that it kind of leveled off for the second benchmark. You notice that you got more level 2s and more level 3s. So it doesn't necessarily mean that our students are going backwards, but we just increase the rigor. Okay? So basically what we're doing here is that we're building stamina. One of the cool things that this team did to address this was they utilized Mr. Smith, the high school principal. So he reached across academies and he worked with this team to introduce a new instructional paradigm called Mountain Math that both the parents and the students have really grown to like, wherein the students complete problem sets that increase in rigor in sets of time increments until they hit their capacity, and then they begin from that point the very next day. So we're constantly increasing. Yes?
Quick question. So if I look at this chart, I can surmise that roughly 70% of our fifth grade math students are at level 4 or 5.
Absolutely. We're growing. All right. So another group that I want to show you, this is the last group I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you an example of a high school group that's taking an EOC, and they're going to be taking their EOCs in about 2 weeks, really a little bit less than that. So the one that I want to show you that we really got strategic on was English 2. We were able to work with Ms. Antona Giovanni, and the same thing that we noticed with them, at the first benchmark, they kept complaining, oh, I was tired, or I just rushed through the end because I was worn out. So right away, we knew we've got to build their stamina. We've got to increase the rigor. We've got to increase the length of the passages because they're tiring out before they can finish. So what we did was, and something else that she focused on her 1s and her 4s. She said, if I can grow this extreme end to the left, and if I can grow this extreme end to the right, then I know that I can grow my middle. So that was her focus after the first benchmark. And you'll notice that she grew each of her levels. Her 1s became 2s, her 2s became 3s, her 3s became 4s, and then some of her 5s, they actually hit their capacity point with their stamina, and they kind of backed up and became 4s because we lengthened the passages. But that just let her know that she needed to keep up with the stamina, keep pushing them, keep picking those long passages so that we can build up their stamina. And ironically enough, we've done that. The kids are not tiring out anymore, and they're able to finish the benchmark and complete it within that same class period. And they could not do that on the first benchmark. So I think we're prepared. I'll take questions.
So there's, the benchmark or the actual evaluation tools, are the teams creating those, or the individual teachers, or is that a state?
Okay, what we're using to create the benchmarks, we're using a tool that DPI recommends called SchoolNet. And the cool thing about SchoolNet is made of older EOCs and EOGs. It takes those older test questions and allows us to mimic those or even pull some of those old release test questions and give it to them that way. It also utilizes the same passages that they're likely to see on the real test, the real EOG or the real EOC. So the way the process works is not the actual questions, but it's similar. But the way the process works is they meet with me, and together we create it. They're the content expert, and I'm trying to get the kids to tap out. I'm trying to boost the rigor and increase the level of blooms and increase the higher order thinking questions. So we work together until we reach an agreement, and then that's their benchmark. And after they finish the benchmark, they have to sit with me and do an item analysis. Once we get the results, we go through, we look to see which objectives did you grow in, which objectives did you not grow in, what's our plan for the objectives that you didn't do so hot in. And then I meet with them a week later to check and say, hey, are these strategies working? If they're not, I give them 3 new research-based strategies.
So the levels 1 to 5. How do you determine the level?
The level is determined by NCBPI. We use their scale scores. Yeah, they're already scaled.
So would that correlate to 1 to 5?
Exactly. So for an example, for English 2, the students can score, as long as they score above an 83, that's considered a 5. But it varies from subject to subject.
I mean, the thing I like about this is it will tell us what we said we won't. Throughout the year, based on our benchmarking strategy, we should know that it
No surprises. No surprises. And even if we see something that doesn't quite add up, like with Ms. Anton Giovanni, she said, okay, this student is at a level 5, but I'm not seeing level 5 work in my class. Then we use EBOS as a cross-reference, the SAS tool. So we go in and we look at their predictor score. EBOS has collected all of their data since the day they entered kindergarten, all the way up until now. So it tracks, and then it's able to give us a predictor score, what they're projected to score. So we cross-reference it with that.
So based on our rating, bottom line is we're going to look at where's our rating going to be at the end of this year. How productive are we, we can report how productive have we been at moving our kids from here to here.
Okay.
So I'm not going to give you a loaded question and say,
No.
what's that going to be, right? But that's the ultimate goal is to say, hey, where are we at compared to where we were prior?
Good question. The way I've been coaching our teachers is that currently we were barely a B, okay? And we have one thing that works in our favor. Our State Department changed the rules for how our 8th graders that are in 8th grade math are being tested. So before, our 8th graders, they had to take both exams. They had to take the Math 1 exam and they had to take the 8th grade math EOG, which our 8th graders are very stealthy. So they would work really, really hard to blow the Math 1 test out of the water. But they really didn't care so hard. They really didn't put as much effort into the 8th grade math because in their eyes, the Math 1 outranked that. So basically they didn't do so hot. So now our state has changed those so that they no longer have to take the 8th grade math EOG, but the only thing that's going to count towards them is the Math 1, which they do really well in. So just by that alone, we should see a 3 to 5% gain just from that. So that works in our favor. The other things that we've been doing is we've really been focusing on the EBOS predictor scores, and we've been coaching our teachers to try to at least make that gain, at least grow them one level. because the name of the game is making sure that you outpace the growth rate of the state. So the growth rate of the state on average is half a proficiency level. So that's why we coach them. Just try to grow them one level, and then you automatically beat the state.
So you talked about changing up some teaching strategies, you manage students with those, so to support some of the students who are on level 1, level 2 stage. Has there been any thought given to individual tutoring?
Yes, a lot of our teachers are utilizing the Cougar time to do individual tutoring. Our teachers, they have been team players. Like, for example, we had a case with Math 1. He noticed that he had 2 students that really needed that one-on-one attention. So he reached out to their other teachers and said, hey, can I have this student during Cougar time every day for the next 2 weeks leading up to the test? And they said, sure. So our teachers are really working together to make sure that we get those students where they need to be during Cougar time so that they can get that one-on-one in the areas that they need it before they test. And also there's after-school tutoring as well. Quite a few teachers have, we've had an increase in the amount of teachers offering after-school tutorial sessions. Some are doing before-school tutorial sessions as well.
So this gives a picture of like subjects at a particular grade level against an assessment. And it's great to start, right? And we'll have to build it to be But if we took a snapshot across our 900-some students, right, at kind of a grade level proficiency, you have a perspective of like how Alabama is that. Like, I'll fire out an example. If I picked a grade and said 5th grade, what kids in 5th grade are really at a second grade?
Yes, EBOS tells us that. And that's why our administrators, we've been going to training to learn exactly how, not only just how to do it, but how to coach our teachers to do it. And our teachers have learned how to do the very thing that you just said in their PLC sessions.
The reason I ask that question is because we have a bubble grade that we deal with it. We understood it was because we took our eye off the ball and let the group slip, so they created this back pressure problem, right? We should never let that happen. We should always be proactive so we can everybody get the system at the right pace. So it'd be good in the future if we could just have a holistic view of where our total student facing, so we can see hot spots of where we need to see that at an aggregate level. I mean, this is good at different subjects and grade levels, but overall we should say, do we have 10% of our student bases that are a year behind in proficiency?
And we can get that for you.
Were there any further questions for Dr. Silver?
Just one comment, so communicating these results to parents. So I did receive from my 3rd grade math teacher, how my 3rd grade did on her assessment. I think she did that for all the students. But I'm very appreciative to know, because I want to see her progression through the year, how she's improving or not improving, if that was the case. I think that should be done for all the students. I think parents should know how their students are progressing or not progressing. And real time, not wait until, several weeks down the road when there's a parent-teacher conference scheduled, right? As soon as we let parents know how the kids are doing, I think that'll be very beneficial.
And I think that's completely in line with the overall plus academic concept is when we get fully converted where possible to a competency system, you'll know at the beginning of the year from your diagnostic assessment what the starting point is, and then collaboratively you'll build the plan for how do we get to what the end point is as we set the goals, and then you'll be able to track those all along because they'll be updated daily, weekly, and you'll be able to track those along with your students. So we'll get even richer data sets beyond just this. These will continue to be point-in-time snapshots, so we have an outside look objectively informing us, but you'll have that internal look from your teacher as well. I'd like to thank Dr. Silver for pulling that report together. Go ahead.
So, one of the things we always heard about is we don't want to over-test, we don't want to test for the sake of testing. Have you got any early feedback from parents or students about, do they see this as really a growth enabler and not just an administrative overhead? Because you can't make progress through something you can't measure. So I'm just curious, what's been the feedback?
The bulk of the feedback from the parent
bulk of the feedback from the parents has been extremely positive. They feel like we're keeping them in the know, we're being transparent with our practices, and we're catching the students before they have the opportunity to fail. I can tell you it's nothing more empowering than being called into a third grade class and you see the children crying. Why are you crying? Because I never thought that I could make a level 5. And that's what we had last week, and then I started crying. But these are the type of things that we have. We decided to only do math this year, but I've already had several ELA English teachers come up to me and say, hey, when are you gonna benchmark us? We don't want to wait the next year for you to add it. Can you start us in January? So those are the type of feedback that we're getting from all of the different parties. The students, they like it because they feel like they're practicing for the real deal. And our high school kids are walking around with their chests poked out because they're ready. They're ready. 2 weeks away and they're ready.
I think one of the other things when we move into the next level of plus in the competency-based education is starting to see different types of assessment. So not just, your standardized tests, but other ways to observe and to show students that they can find success, because not everyone tests well. And also, I personally don't think, Rodney and I have had this conversation, that we need to grow students who attach their worth to a number. Like I'm a 5 or oh, I'm a 1. So there are other ways that students will start to learn and demonstrate their capabilities in different subject matters, and that's our movement, which is a national movement really towards the competency-based education.
I'll say too that I've heard from a couple of parents that they felt very positive about the testing as well, and particularly and I can speak from the 3rd grade because these parents were in the 3rd grade, that not only just from these benchmark tests, but the amount of testing that's being done in the classroom as well as the benchmark tests, that they were very pleased and thought it was very positive.
What's great about the way that we've introduced the initiative is that the teachers are a part of the process. It's not something that we've created and handed down. We've said, when do you want to give it? The teachers all agreed that the week before progress reports, we were open to what you thought would be a good time for giving these. In addition, they know when they're coming and can determine, I know my students and I know what their testing fatigue looks like, so I'm going to schedule these other types of informal assessments around this so that I'm not putting them through the high anxiety of taking what they would consider formal assessments over and over and over again. So because they're a part of the process all along, they can adapt as they like within the classroom setting to make sure that the students are having a positive experience on both sides of it. And to what we learned too, when they had the extreme fatigue on the first session, okay, great, we need to do different things in class so that you're not being fatigued by a 20-question assessment or a 25-question assessment.
So I feel like that's a very important point to bring up, is that testing just for testing is almost counterintuitive, where we run the risk of getting information that isn't very representative of how students will perform in an actual important one, which, like you said, we're unfortunately limited by the fact that our school, or all of the education's parameters are set, and at the end of the year, you'll be judged by the one number you get. So that's always very important. In the settings that I work in, which are usually for AP exams, where that number is also very important, the most valuable resource that I have found, and I feel like other students also relate to it, is we are exposed to the questions and the problems and the thinking that we will have to employ during the actual important test, during class, and we get to discuss it, and there's strategic, and it's guided with the real purposeful direction that is provided by our teachers and our instructors, and that's the most valuable resource you can whenever you have to approach that final, here, this is the one that counts. So as long as these, like as Dr. Silver pointed out, the stamina building exercises, I was actually able to see what some of the benchmark tests looked like, and some of the questions and how it was formatted. I feel like as a student, seeing it at first, it would seem almost excessive. If the idea that the purpose of that specific benchmark is to formulate and exercise this specific skill of being able to go through those long passages and still be able to retain that information and apply it to the question, if that was very apparent, students would have to be more receptive to it, and the relationship with their teacher and the role that the teacher is playing for that specific test would be much more fluid, and that would be very helpful. But yes, this is a very important point. of this academic renewal.
Again, thank you, Dr. Silver, for the presentation, and thank you, everyone, for such rich dialogue. This is feedback that really helps us and sort of helps us feel good about where we are because it's coinciding with other feedback that we're receiving. As a reminder, I'll be hosting another roundtable this Thursday where the conversation will be around curriculum and calendars and electives and things like that. So we're hopeful that we'll have a really good turnout. I've already seen a lot of chatter on the Facebook discussion page, so I'm excited that people will be coming. Also, what's really cool about this one is we're sort of piggybacking. Our guidance department, through some feedback and research, determined that cyber safety was a big concern for our parents, and that also came out of our safety roundtable as well. And so immediately prior to the roundtable, starting at 4:30, we'll have a cyber safety workshop that's going to be led up by our guidance department, our technology director. I'm not sure if Officer Lee is joining us or not. Officer Lee, our school resource officer, will be joining us as well, just to help parents understand social media apps, navigate how that all works for their children, and get some safety tips and learn how to monitor their child's safety. So if you can get here at 4:30, you're going to get a good night of information. So if you can join us Thursday, that would be great. And that does conclude my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to everyone for your comments. We don't have anything on our consent agenda, so we'll move right into our committee reports. Finance.
It's very good to have Rodney back. He's been digging back in, so it's a good thing. And we have had a couple of one finance meeting and then a follow-up meeting this morning. Big thing I want to report on is that we are removed from our financial non-conformance status. That's big news for the school. I think everyone saw that, so thanks for those who were on the committee prior to my joining and the board. The other thing, you have a condensed budget in front of you here. It's a lot of numbers, and you may want to go over that. But the one thing I do want to put out is that based on ADM, our adjusted projected surplus is somewhere around 186,000 right now. So that's a number for us. Remember, we're operating in the positive, and that's a good thing. And we are utilizing, Susan talked about that more, utilizing some of the other resources, as Dr. Silver has discussed already, to try to put some money there where it needs to be. The other thing, that's kind of financial update. The other thing I think we've added in is the facilities subcommittee into this. So there has been a lot of discussion about that. You can see the steel's been moved out here. You could until it got dark, yeah. But anyway, we've been ready to work on the removal of the modulars here. So there'll be a lot of work going on. We still have to work with the town of Smithfield about power and water removal or cutoff and that type of thing. Have several of the parents that have offered to come help get that done. We've got a kind of a tight time frame there from around the 17th, 18th of December until the work starts. But I don't see any issues there. We are talking about storage solutions. I'll let Susan bring that up a little later so we don't talk about it twice. And the one big thing from a facility standpoint is to get you kind of thinking outside the box some, as we always talked about building buildings in a certain way. We actually brought up to get the most bang out of our facility committee and how we address getting students into a permanent facility here is possibly going to a building where that it maintains the elementary and the middle school. So from a capacity standpoint, so we don't know what that looks like exactly. It'll have to be breakout sessions where we really put some minds together. But that was something that for us to food for thought there. And I'm sure that a lot of the elementary kids, grandparents, and all of that would be willing to entertain us talking about that. So anyway, that was one thing that really did come up. And then obviously capital campaign and how do we really go about that to get to the point where we can continue to move the news charter forward. Chris isn't here tonight, but he had some really good insight on that. So for now, that's fine.
Thank you.
something.
You want to talk, Dave?
No?
No.
He's got something he wants to say.
Oh, okay.
But John, I was just gonna say that, we were successful.
We were successful in getting Vanguard to, when we terminate the lease, basically, which saved us about 17 grand. So, you know, it's just from a perspective standpoint, to remove the misers cost 20 grand. So just having to remove that stuff, not including removal of the ramps, the skirting, disconnection of power, et cetera. So, you know, we've got that budgeted from a facilities committee standpoint. From NCSF, we have that 20,000 budgeted, but for the disconnections and things like that, we didn't have a budget for that. So that 17,000 will come in handy. I'm trying to get, I'm working with Vanguard now to try to go ahead and firm up the lease, so we're not caught over a barrel like we were 2 years, a year and a half ago. So, you know, all indications are they'll probably try to get that 17,000 back on a 2-year lease, but we'll see how that goes anyway. Thanks.
Thank you. Any items or report from personnel in open session? I do believe there's some closed session items. Okay, academic affairs. As you can tell, thank you, Dr. Silver, for your report and putting together all the information. We've had some robust dialogue in our meetings, and so we're excited to be able to present, and I'm actually going to let either Susan or Janice take the lead on the discussion, but through our conversations, we've been able to finalize our graduation competencies, so our proposed competencies, and we ask that you take a listen as we discuss the 4 competencies, and we will be looking for any kind of input. These are not final, they are just proposed. It should be a 1-sheeter in your packet. Do either one of you want to talk a little bit about how we, as you may recall, at our last retreat in the summer, we had a little lesson on competencies and discussed some general areas. So we have been basically wordsmithing to try to develop items for understanding and clarity, kind of simple to manipulate and present to the broad audience of both students, parents, and the general community. Teachers have been heavily involved in this, and so this is where we have landed. You want to talk a little bit more about the input from the...
I feel like we should have the post-it chart paper up that had all of the squiggly lines. And yes, so really the process has been much as Dawn described. We took it to the school improvement team for an initial review for staff, and they gave us some really valuable input that we brought back to academic affairs, and then we took it to the entire staff at a recent faculty meeting and gave them some opportunities to sort of sit on it and marinate on it, and gave them opportunities to come see us and talk to us about it. Really the only substantive feedback that's a little bit different from anything that we had already discussed was that in our mission we do talk about critical and creative thinking skills, and whether or not we wanted to include the word creative in that second competency was the last bit of feedback that was gotten before, after printing kind of thing. So that was really the only one that hasn't been addressed in some way or some fashion. What was great about taking it to the school improvement team is we really went through an exercise of, do we see our mission here? Let's read our mission, and we went through that, and everyone agreed that it was, do we see our core values that we just talked about, positive climate, leadership, respect, etc. And everyone went down each individual one and said, they're in there. I had one teacher kind of come and say, well, I don't see anything about, let's say, numeracy skills. And I said, great. Does that fit? And is that a requirement to be able to use advanced computational skills to analyze data? Well, certainly. Great. That'll sit underneath it when we start building the framework that supports each of these graduation competencies. So it was great for everyone could see that we can start leading up to this. And so when we talk about plus, essentially, if I'm doing whatever everything adds up to, it would add up to this, that our students know and are able to successfully demonstrate that they have this skill set, which then starts to branch out and get really broad when we take it all the way down to kindergarten and run it all the way up to senior year and talk about, does everything align with helping our students achieve these goals? And I know Kevin's had an opportunity to review them as well. And and talk with Dr. Silver about it, so if he has any additional comments from a student perspective, that might be helpful.
As well, actually, it was thank you very much for providing me these. I wasn't quite sure if they were finalized yet, but now that I see these here, these, as I saw when I first was introduced to them, I believe that this would be a very important thing to be able to say, hey, our graduates from this charter school, they're able to, through our Plus program or through our Plus initiative, have been able to achieve these, because there's a very attractive qualities in any person, whether it be an employee or a candidate for some kind of position or even collegiate acceptance. It'd be very valuable to say, hey, I graduated from this school and I can do these things. One of my questions, or by seeing these, that they're being competencies for graduation, are these going to be factors that are on a year-by-year basis? Like, where are you on track through your academic career? Are you on track for, at the point of graduation, will you be able to reach these? Or will it be at the end of your graduation year saying, hey, has this student been able to reach this? How is it going to be quantified? Or how is it going to be a qualitative assessment where the teachers sit down and say, hey, here are places where we've seen you shine, and here are places where we've seen you struggle a bit, or how can we work on that? Because having these set as graduation competencies would probably want to be a progressive through your high school career, all the way through our academies as a joint effort. But how will they actually be applied, or where can we identify these qualities?
Absolutely. This is stage one in terms of setting the big goal, and then the next phase is really coming up with the measurements and then the assessments that go all the way, as Susan mentioned, all the way down to kindergarten. So the goal in the kindergarten teacher seeing this is making the decision that, oh, spoken verbal communication skills is very important. So I'm going to include more activities where my little kindergarten students have to get up and talk or present. And so everyone can keep doing that. They're going to focus on grammar because they know by the time you get to your senior year, there will be a measurement where you perhaps have to write a 5-paragraph essay with 5 or less grammatical errors. That's your measurement to say, all right, everybody should be able to do this after 12 years of being here. You should be able to write an essay with less than 5 grammatical errors. And so there will be, now we may set our measurement that 98% of our graduates can do it, or whatever the school decides, but there will be some way that we quantify before you walk across that stage that, yes, everyone has met our graduation competencies.
So I have a question related to that. As you go through the grades, is there, and will there be a way to track this on the boards to the parents? You're going to have your objective grades based on that performance, but then also a part that's subjective that you can get feedback on. We used to do our performance, that second piece of the performance. So thoughts on that?
Yeah, that kind of goes back to me talking about the competency base, that there'll be different types of assessment. So maybe in 7th grade, English, they have formal presentations, oral presentations. So that might be the assessment, that in that particular group for that particular assessment, 85% of our students need to have a certain grade in that activity. So it's not going to be hit or miss. There'll be identified standard assessment assignments in various grades that will link to the competency. So as you cycle through the grades, you will come up against these assessment assignments that then will be able to be reported out. Yay, 85% of our 7th graders can, and there'll be standardized rubrics and ways to grade. They've been able to meet this assessment towards our graduation competency.
And should you come up short, I'm sure there would be some kind of work plan or approach that you can go through and sharpen these skills.
To Kevin's point, then that's similar to the bench.
Because
Any other type of formative or ongoing assessment that we do would be use that to tailor rank, what we need to for that student to be successful. In addition, I look at this at the top end of the scale too. If a student is showing our 12th grade level competency in the 7th or 8th grade, that then is going to be a challenge to us, not to say, okay, they've checked it off, what do I need to do to enrich that area and make sure that I continue to grow that area so they don't fall back? So they don't say, well, I checked that one off in the 8th grade, so yeah, I never have to talk in public again. And then at the end of senior year are stumbling over their words as they're trying to go through an interview for a scholarship application or something. So that would be another thing for us to continue to personalize that part of the piece for the student, to make sure that when we see that they're maxing out early, to come back a little bit and start diving deep instead of just hitting proficiency. Let's go for mastery, and let's go for where we can really enrich and grow the student in this particular area.
So
What's missing from this is all of the sort of framework that sits underneath it, and we're going to continue to bring that where you can start to see what staff is going to do with it. We're going to build, what's the assessment look like, or what's the assessment strategy look like? How do I then start working with all of my teacher teams to figure out, okay, well then that means all the way down at kindergarten we need to have an assessment that looks like this, or we all need to come up with a similar writing rubric that we use that just gets enhanced a little bit as the students get older, as the expectation gets a little higher. Maybe it starts with 10 or less grammatical errors at some point and gets whittled down to 5 or less, so that we can give the students those opportunities to see and improve and grow. And again, give them that positive coaching. I think about athletic events as well, be able to say, this is specifically where I see you need to work on something, let's go work on it together.
See, when we were talking about the benchmarking and looking at standardized tests and those approaches, I'm like, okay, that's good, but the what about? And this really seems to hit on the what about, because if you sharpen this, you're going to be able to hit those benchmarks a lot better on the standardized testing, because this is where, I think everybody, the students have a tendency to, what can we do to be better? What can we do to learn more? And I think this gets us there. So this is the other piece of the puzzle. I hope this is something that can just continue to stay on. All of these things we've heard tonight really need to stay on track, and whatever we can do to prioritize and make those things and get through the cycle, putting these in place and continuing to update them and have them functional as far as what we're doing is going to be really important.
I completely agree, and that's why, Susan and I have chatted about, this is all we're going to be talking about at board meetings, is this initiative and what we're doing to build the entire process and get it deployed to this school. So not that other things are not important, but this is what we're about. This creates and produces our product, which is an educated graduate. And so I'm very excited because I think this gives everyone at this school the destination. And what we'll start putting together is the roadmap. But this will create buy-in so that the history teacher knows he has to grade and comment on the history paper, on grammar as well, because I got to do my part to help ensure that this student has strong writing skills and not just worry about history content and say he's not an English teacher so he doesn't grade that way. So I think, this really will let all of us know this is exactly, what our student will look like when they cross that stage. And I think we can be very confident that they have the important skill sets. And these are competencies that you generally see, university level in some organized structures at work and so forth. So I think it's kind of agreed upon that these are some basic competencies that individuals need to have to be successful. So thank you again to the Academic Affairs Committee, everyone, for your work and input on this. And so next phase will be really starting to work on the standardized assessments, at what level, what our benchmarks are going to be, and so forth.
I just have one quick question. I need a little more clarification on bullet 4. That one doesn't quite, it may just be semantics, but a little more clarification as to what that is. Are we talking about evaluating information or collaborating as a group? I'm not sure.
I think both. So when you're in a meeting like here, and this is a lot of what both university and industry is saying in terms of people that they work with. Number one, we have moved it to an avenue where people like to do this by themselves. And we have the word fake news and all sorts of stuff out there. We need individuals who can evaluate information they hear and respect different opinions in a group environment and still able to work together. Not that you have to come to consensus, but you're in a whole group and everyone has different information, and can you discern what you're hearing and not literally believe everything, or you want to value what Paul says but discard somebody else. Universities and industry are saying we work in teams all the time, we collaborate, and we have people who are coming out and just struggle with that, with those interactions. And these are very common, as I said before, in terms of valuing diversity, working in a collaborative environment, competencies that you see in a lot of schools.
Okay, and I understand that and appreciate that. That's great. I just think the actual wording
The
on
wording,
the
okay.
bullet is, maybe it's just me, but,
Do you have any suggestions? Because we've been wordsmithing back and forth, so.
I'm trying. Just one thing, I would start with the word collaboratively. So that's, I don't know, but, I know y'all have been working very hard on it. So.
Well, no, we don't take offense, we struggle too. Yes.
Struggling over that frustrating about whatever. So any.
I'll make a comment on it. I apologize for missing the last academic affairs meeting, but to this fourth point here, I was also reading it. This is some new wording here, but I mean, to me, it came out as definitely something dealing with group work, dealing with people, and so that word information kind of threw me off. And potentially a better word may be perspectives, because we're talking about people providing opinions and giving. So I don't know if information could be replaced with the word perspective, suggestion, there's something.
I agree, the word information was
Evaluate the diverse perspectives.
And I
Well,
think
you
we're.
need that at all. I mean, if you think something, evaluate the value of diversity to effectively collaborate. It's not just information, it's not just people, right?
Okay.
It did read a little while, because I enjoyed the process of it. The people side is the information side of reality, and it has to be both.
So evaluate and value diversity to effectively collaborate. I like it.
I think we can all appreciate the products of the massive undertaking that our Academic Affairs Committee has attempted at trying to encompass all the wide range of traits that an optimal or exemplary graduate would have, and honing that idea in, also just specific wording, it's very important. But as well with that goal, it also presents another thing that I also wanted to point out, which was one of the difficulties we had in my own work, the leadership retreat, was identifying students that perhaps have leadership qualities that aren't traditional, that aren't what's typically comes to mind when you think of a leader. Or perhaps we will have students that maybe do not fit word for word or letter by letter the specific shape that we have identified as the most viable for judging our graduates. So whenever you see what's a good graduate from our school, it's kind of like I know it when I see it, but these parameters do help guide that. So I think one thing to keep in mind, as you stated, this is just a very preliminary step into taking this. It takes a village to raise a child, that idea, but keeping in mind that maybe at the end of the graduate's academic career, maybe they haven't word for word reached these goals, or maybe they still struggle in some areas, and it'll have to be something they in the future will also still have to work on. But understanding that even at this very sophisticated level of trying to put a shape to that incredible mold of what is a proper graduate, there's going to be students that do not reach that or do not define what these are. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll counter back with that. I'll counter back with that a little bit. I hear what you're saying, but in that, you should honor diversity of how someone demonstrates it. So, for example, when we say people need to collaborate as teams, people immediately have a notion of what collaborate as a team looks like in their perspective. I will tell you, as an engineer, my definition of a superstar that can collaborate may not even talk to people.
It is absolutely true. I mean, they may be a superstar coder where they're collaborating in industry forums to solve, some mathematical problem is a different form of collaboration.
Yeah, and that's the point I'm trying to make.
And so absolutely, I hear you. I think what we have to do is say that when we say we evaluate and value diversity, if we value diversity, we would actually achieve that. A student may not be one mode of collaboration, but they should be able to collaborate in some mechanism because they can't live in the world of their own. So I do hear you. I think it's how you look at it.
And to sort of follow up on that, that's where the challenge will become for us as educators is how do we develop enough and varied assessments so that students can show us their skill sets and their ability to meet these competencies in their different perspectives and in their different ways. And so it's not going to be a single writing assignment. There'll be multiple opportunities that come in different areas that allow us to continue to assess these. Or the collaboration piece, and maybe we look at the way they collaborate in an art project or the way that they collaborate on a technology project or the way they collaborate on a future leader project where they're maybe even sitting in the corner quietly, but we start to learn and assess what skills they're representing there. So that'll be the challenge for us as educators is to continue to make sure that our assessment strategies are broad enough to truly allow each student to show how they're demonstrating proficiency without watering down the proficiency.
And that was the word I was.
It's gonna be that,
Yeah.
that middle ground.
I'm getting graduate transcripts for faculty that I hire that have no grades. It's just their professors talking about what they observed, what they were able to produce, and, it's a little crazy when you have to get accreditations, try to not have grades, but that's really the direction nationally that we're talking about with competency-based education, that it's less about sticking it into these, 4 grades and more talking about what they've been able to produce in a variety of ways.
And that's why whenever the idea of how are we going to measure it, whenever benchmarking was done, like grammar tests, that's why I was worried. It's like, hey, maybe that approach is not.
I think it'll be diverse enough that everyone can fit in. Okay, thank you. Is it finalized? Does anyone want to have a little bit more time to let it marinate with additional comments, or we can take entertain a motion for approval of these competencies so we can move on to next steps.
I make a motion we accept the competencies with the one amendment of removing information.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, so the fourth bullet is evaluate and value diversity to effectively collaborate.
Correct. Good. Any other discussion?
What did you put in there, Jason? I said it's diverse perspective, but I do like, suggestions that.
Collaboratively first. No, when you take information out, to evaluate and value diversity to effectively collaborate.
Okay.
Evaluate, value diverse resources and skill sets. Still retaining what you wanted to say with information there, with resources, but also skill sets. It's very difficult.
Yeah, I think just leaving it diversity, as Rodney's point, just really then encompasses whatever thing that you want to attach to it. Okay, we have a motion, and we've had discussion, and a second. Oh,
I mean, if you take out value and you say evaluate diversity to effectively collaborate, I'm not sure that fits. Evaluate diversity, you know what I'm saying? So maybe value diversity to effectively collaborate. Take out value.
I will tell you that someone that has to work in a team with highly diverse teams globally, and I'll tell you, there's times when you really need to evaluate the diversity that's in front of you. Because you can have 2 perspectives, you can have an opinion on one, unless you really evaluate them and understand them, you
I get you from a vocabulary perspective,
Right.
it does sound a little
Maybe
odd.
maybe evaluate
Do you want to add
perspective.
the ability to evaluate? Because that's what you're saying, Ronnie, is that we need the ability to evaluate diversity.
How about evaluate perspectives, to your point, and value diversity to effectively collaborate?
But we're talking more than just perspectives, right? We're talking about information, taking data.
Right?
So is it evaluate or is it leverage? Leverage and value, and leverage. Evaluate seems like you assess it, right?
Yeah.
They're going through the same thing we did. Yeah.
So you use leverage.
No, I'm saying we,
Get stuck on one word and,
Would it be better to let it sit then, or?
do you want to let it sit? We don't have a, or I guess we have to vote on in December. But, just to let you know.
our timing was really geared toward trying to do a launch and of at least the competencies in January. But that gives us just the month of December. Let it sit. We'll let everybody let it sit, so. Tweak it. Do we, yeah. You said the motion. Thank you. Right, right. Well, no, we're gonna,
Stay on track. Okay, resource development. Resource development.
you also haven't, are you doing that, Robbie? Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Stated for Chris, just a couple of things here. So you do have your committee purpose and goals in the packet. So that's there. Susan is showing those. The other thing is the capital or the fundraising. The reverse raffle is scheduled for February the 23rd. So mark your calendars. And that's the big thing. I did want to share, we did make, I verified this from Susan, I guess a little over, no, with Amanda, a little over 8K with our Yankee candle. So that, I mean, that was very positive. We were looking at like 5K. Right, Amanda? Yes. So very positive there. And I think we discussed before, there was a lot of effort put into it, but not a lot of communicating outside of our normal saying, send it home, it comes back, and that's what you have. So very positive results there. The other big thing that we talked about, Dave, Chris, and myself, was about how do we specifically go after a capital campaign and the amount of money that we needed to start our next big project. I don't know if Dave will speak some about that or not.
We just need $500,000.
Yes, so 500,000 is the next step, and I can tell you, there was some issues, there was some talk about bonds and how we go about some of that. I think that's more Chris being able to help us out with that. But there is some bonds with the new school in Clayton Knowledge that they're going to go after, and we should be able to be a part of that also.
I believe that one, sir.
Yeah, yeah.
It's very politically charged.
Yeah,
I think we can't rely on, I don't think we can rely on bond money. I know that's, Chris's hope and his optimistic viewpoint. I'm a very optimistic person, but I give it a 3% chance of happening.
Yeah, and we also looked at potentially issuing our own bond. And Lee and I looked at it. When you look at the finances, you got to be north of like 15 million to justify the expenses of the bond, and that's just out of our range.
And I really think that with the General Assembly, you've got about all the change you're going to get. If anything, that supermajority starts to go away, and even the thoughts of that start to diminish as far as charters go. So.
Yeah, I will say a positive, we're pretty close. I mean,
Our viewpoint in our committees is that, we'll extend the lease with Vanguard until 2020. And so our goal is to have a building ready to go for 2020. 2020. So, I mean, we gotta have a goal. I mean, I think, and I think it's very attainable. You know, I really do. You know, we have to have, you know, some dollars for contingency expenses, and we have a very nice contingency account now. But we're pretty close, I think, to having the contingency plus another $500,000 to be able to start that project. So, we're not as, I can see the light. You know, it's not impossible. And then we talked in our resource development about, you know, big contributions. What would you name? Would you continue in classroom? You know, big type stuff that we could, you know, build a building that would accommodate both the elementary and middle schools and allow for growth. So I'm excited. I think it's, you know, I'm excited about what I hear with the academics, and certainly, you know, the facilities is part of housing that academic, you know, setting. So future's bright.
We need to approve the committee purpose and goals. Thank you very much. I think we're, Chris, in the committee. So we have academic affairs, finance, and now we have resource development. So we're chugging along. So I will entertain a motion to approve our committee description for our bylaws.
So if we're on the committee, can we do that?
Yeah.
So, I move that we approve the committee description.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion passed. Thank you. I think we are only meeting personnel and board development.
In talking with some of the chairs for personnel in particular, I'm not sure if the board might want to entertain switching that to an ad hoc committee. That it wouldn't have to be a standing committee because it tends to only meet as needed. And if there are special projects that need to be assigned to it, that can be done. But there was some discussion about whether or not the board would want to discuss that for personnel. I know for board development, as your executive director, I'd highly recommend that continue to be a standing meeting, and that we leverage that for your training purposes, et cetera.
Okay.
But with personnel, I know there was some discussion about whether or not you might want to consider converting that to ad hoc, so you wouldn't be required to have the regularly scheduled meetings.
We'll take that discussion up in the next executive committee and then bring a recommendation to the board. Thank you very much. Board development? No report? Okay. Any old business? New business? We have 2 contracts for review and approval.
Staff would like to bring to you a recommendation for continuation of our psychological services contract. This contract has not gone up. They've not increased their rates. They continue to provide excellent services for us in an efficient manner as possible for the types of services that are required. You have before you a request for approval form that has some information about, you know, risk of not having it and so forth. So I'd be open to any questions about the recommendation. And just as a reminder, this is one of the contracted services that we use to make sure that we're compliant with IDA regulations related to IEP services.
What's your assessment of performance?
Excellent. They do a really great job of meeting our needs at the most cost-effective way possible, keeping the hours to as minimum.
Do you recommend approving this contract?
I do. And just as a point of,
It's the same firm.
this is the separate part of what you're talking about. Just as a point of protocol, we are starting to build through Finance Committee our process for identifying which contracts should be on like a 3-year cycle for rebidding. And so this one will most likely be in one of those ones coming up soon. But for now, we wanted to go ahead and continue the contract.
Okay.
Is this additional line item expense or already?
No, this is already baked into the budget, and the rate would be the same as what was already previously budgeted. So there'd be no increase to the budget for this. This would just be maintained.
I'll make a motion to approve the proposal on EC services.
Any discussion, further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion passed. The next approval request.
The next approval request that we have prepared is the purchase of a storage shed. As you know, we have some needs for storing materials during the construction time period, and we've evaluated the cost effectiveness of off-site storage versus other types of temporary storage, and feel that this would be the most financially sound within a 3-year time period. We'll essentially, if I were to use an off-site storage, that also would involve using trucks and trailers and all of that type of labor. At the end of 3 years, we would have paid for this, and then we'd have to renew if construction, going into 2020, et cetera, might need that storage a little bit longer. As a point of information, as we are doing the construction project for the new area, we don't have a furniture budget essentially baked into it, so I need to hang on to all the furniture that's in those classrooms so that I can repopulate the classrooms when we open up next summer. So it'd just be really great if we could have some on-site storage for that, as well as so that we can maintain furniture that's been donated to the school. We also have some large props that our musical department would like to have a place to store. It would just be great for us to have some on-site storage that doesn't cost as much as building it into an actual construction project.
Have you looked at a shipping container?
Pardon?
Did you look at a shipping container?
We did not look at a shipping container specifically because we were led to look for aesthetics to make sure that it complemented the structure that's already on campus.
What size?
12 by 20.
They're very secure, the shipping containers, more so, and they have the ribbed sides too.
You can stack them.
Yeah, you can stack them and take them around.
They make buildings now. They're very cost effective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's because we can't put anything back in them to send them out.
You know who didn't like it.
I was still giving the guidance that was provided.
Yes, the landlord just requested we do something close to what was out there.
Ready.
But are these?
We can get rid of the other one and get 2 shipping containers and say.
But how is this in
I make
terms
a
of
motion
the?
to approve this beautiful structure as we
Wait.
make our grade.
Do we have a second?
Can I just, because I didn't get a chance to write back to your answer to my email this morning, is this tax is going to be refunded?
Well, because we have tax exempt status, the question came forward. Sometimes I can't avoid paying the tax on the purchase, and so our accountants will get it back for us during tax refund time period. So any taxes that are erroneously charged, we get refunded, but some companies don't have the capacity to be able to not charge it to us on the front end. So anything that would be due back to us, we would get back during refund times.
How is this for humidity? I mean, because you're storing furniture, if it has, is it good for? Yeah, because sometimes you do that and it comes out and it's all moldy and.
Yep, so Susan and I, we looked at several different options here. This one actually has insulation in the sides. It does not have any of the skylights or anything, so moisture has to go somewhere in a building. It's going to go in there, so whenever you got hot and cold, it's either absorbed by the wood or whatever you put in there. So anyway, it was something this guy told us that the best option was what we looked at as far as having insulation on, but the moisture will be absorbed by the insulation. It will. But you still, there's a chance. Right? So just like anyone out there. So.
Is there power out there?
No. No power.
How do you secure it?
It has, the one we looked at has a roll-up door and actually it has a slide and a padlock. And again, we went to 3 different places, and I think she looked online also.
Put it on a concrete slab.
Because the building needs to be temporary, it'll be on the cylinder block type structures, and this price includes everything. There's no other additional cost. This is all turnkey, delivered, installed,
Grading,
anything that would need to be done for that. I don't think there's guttering.
Okay, we do have a motion.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I will say one thing, we checked the town that been discussion.
I miss you, Dave. You can say whatever you want.
Love you too, Don. Anyway, I did check with the town today, and it will require permitting. So we'll have to pull 2 permits, one for the actual building itself, and then one for zoning. So, and then we have to take it to, we get the town to permit it, then we take it over to the county. It's an arduous process, but it should be, it should be turnkey. We do need to supply a drawing to the town, just a site drawing, and just kind of draw it in, kind of to scale. It doesn't have to be 2 to scale, but, okay. Yeah, you can get about a 2-day turnaround. If you got your stuff, application. And I asked the town to waive the fees, but who knows? That's all I have.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passed.
For the record, I have Robbie as the first and Rodney as the second. We were trying to clarify our notes back here. Or was Rodney? Minutes, right? I did have one other item that didn't make it into here as we talked about finances earlier, and we talked about the PLUS initiative, and we're looking at our current surplus. Would like to recommend that the board consider a bonus for staff, December bonus at $250 per staff member. And see if you all would consider that, just in recognition of the hard work that's been put in already to get the PLUS initiative in place, and also recognizing that we're in relatively solid footing from a surplus perspective.
And just to be clear, so we've talked a couple of years about the overarching, assessment and compensation strategy, whatever. What we talked about was just as we plan out the rest of the year, as far as as we get closer to the end year, we've always said we want to do an end of the year, like the fiscal end of the year bonus evaluation. Our plan is to come with a final recommendation of that at the March meeting. And then after talking with Susan, she wants to be able to have a full compensation proposal for the next academic year in February, so that would line up with contract renegotiations, all that stuff. So just wanted to note that all of that will happen as we had talked about last year, for the end of the year. This recommendation is just one that she just thought, given the environment, all the hard work that we put in place, that it would just be a nice touch point at this point of the year, tied to all the hard work they've done. So just to put it in a bigger perspective.
So this already go through finance?
Yeah.
Okay, so fine.
We approved it.
Okay.
The total to include Social Security taxes would be $21,799, and there's already $2,000 in the budget for the annual holiday dinner and so forth. So that total all-in package would be $23,799 at $250 per staff member with 83 staff.
ADM is up. People switch probably almost. Can't see that.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passed. Thank you. And I did want to ask how Ms. Williams' interview went today. If you want to share a little bit about what, just so people won't read and not know that what's going on.
A staff member from the News and Observer came today. They're working on an article to talk about the positive relations that Johnston County has with charter schools and the local school district, as opposed to maybe some other areas. And she's had an opportunity to interview staff from Johnson County Public Schools and came and talked with me, and it was a great conversation. She was able to be here when we had wrestling practice and cross country practice and robotics team and musical practice and everything going on. She came right in the middle of carpool and was like, okay, there's a lot happening here. I said, yes, there always is. But we just had a really good, honest conversation about how we're excited to be a part of the innovation and choice that's happening in the county, and that we've been able to be a part of that for the last 10 years. And if not inspire and be a part of what's happening within the district itself. And when it all comes down to it, as long as we're doing what's right for students, then we're all good. So we talked about the partnerships with the chamber, how we have had such a strong board that's really helped us keep our missional focus and do that outreach that's needed in the community so that we can have a positive relationship with our local school district. So I'm hopeful for a positive article.
Thank you so much.
I will say also that it's interesting, and I think it's exciting, no matter what. That's one of the reasons why I stayed on the board, is to ensure school choice in Johnston County, that different schools within Johnston County schools are starting to explore schools within a school. So I think we will see a lot of, changes. We're having another charter school. So I think overall that is all good for our county and helping students find the best fit for their educational needs. So I will entertain a motion to go into closed session, as we do have
Before you do that, you mentioned December meeting. I didn't know if you.
Oh, yeah, the December meeting, which we typically have a little earlier than the fourth Tuesday. Is it the fourth or third Tuesday? So can we look at another day, or do you want to not have a December meeting, or what is the pleasure of the board?
Staff would respectfully ask that if you do make the decision to cancel, that perhaps you schedule an executive committee meeting sometime during the month, just in case there's business that needs to be done.
So our normal meeting would be the 26th, obviously. So
School will have its last day of school on December 19th.
Early release.
And it's an early release day as well, and it's also our staff appreciation dinner, or lunch.
the 12th, or do you want to do it the 19th, or the 19th? What was your concern, Ron?
What it is, world.
No.
I think it's really just we're trying to get everybody.
Yeah, that is true. Beginning on the 18th will be a flurry of activity and preparation.
Maybe that should be a board bonding event.
I got you.
Come in your school.
Okay, so let's schedule it for the 19th. Okay. Regular time. Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, so now I entertain a motion to go into closed session.
So, I'm next motion to go to
Thank you.
Do you need to vote on that motion?
Hey, good feedback. That's great.